and Dad. My four teachers in the Brophy English department have been Mr. Middlemist, Mr. McShane, Mr. Damaso, and Mr. Middlemist. My favorite book I've read has been The Great Gatsby, as I've taken a lot of valuable lessons from it. The most important thing I've learned so far is to be concise in my writing, and what I want to learn this year is to be able to glean and take more from the literature that I read. If I could be one character from a book or film, it would be Miles Teller from Whiplash, as I push myself to the limits in things that I do. And thank you for listening.
Hi Mom, hi Dad. Over the 4 years at Brophy, I've had Mr. Smith, Mr. McShane, Mr. Damaso, and Mr. Middlemist. My favorite book over my 4 years has been The Count of Monte Cristo because it's a great revenge story. The most important thing I learned about writing is the analysis of evidence. And this year I'd like to learn how to write more concise pieces of writing. And if I could be any character, I'd like to be Aragorn for Lord of the Rings. Thanks for listening.
Hi Mom or Dad, I know you're probably not both there, so what's up? The four Brophy English teachers I've had have been Mr. Middlemist, Mr. Pigeon, Miss Maynard, and Mr. Middlemist again. My favorite literature I've read at Brophy was The Alchemist. What I've learned at Brophy writing is how to write concise and with good evidence. And then what I want to learn this year is to write more extravagant and with more fruity language. And a character from any book or film that we've watched that I would consider myself most as, or who I'd like to be most, is Luke from Star Wars. Thank you for listening. Love you guys.
Hi Mom and Dad. For English, I've had Middlemist, Danforth, Damaso, and Middlemist. My favorite Brophy assigned English book has been The Things They Carried because of what it teaches about the truth. The most important thing I want to learn about writing this year is how to enjoy literature instead of reading as a requirement. So far I've learned from Brophy that writing is best when it comes from the heart. If I could be any character from any book or film, I'd want to be Hulk from Endgame because he's ripped and smart. Thanks for listening.
Hi Mom and Dad. At Brophy I've had Mr. Middlemist, Mr. Danforth, Mr. Damaso, and finally Mr. Middlemist again. My favorite book while reading at Brophy was The Once and Future King due to its great character development. Most important thing I've learned is how to analyze evidence in my writing. This year I want to learn how to become a better creative writer, and if I could be any character from a book or film, I would be Frodo Baggins from The Hobbit because he's a great underdog. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Hi Mom and Dad. My past English teachers have been Mr. Middlemist, Mr. Danforth, and Mr. Damaso. My favorite assigned book was The Kite Runner because it was very interesting. The most important thing Brophy has taught me about writing is the importance of revision. This year I want to learn about how to do better on the AP test, and if I could be a character from a book or film, I'd be Michael Scott from The Office.
Mom and Dad, it's Bradley. My Brophy career, I've had Middlemist, McShane, Damaso, and the Middlemist again. Favorite book I've ever read, Huckleberry Finn. First time I ever really laughed out loud while reading literature, really cool feeling. Something I really want to learn this year is the importance of beginning paragraphs with a claim. I also really want to learn how to love reading for pleasure. If I could be any character from a movie or book, probably Doctor Strange, because time travel is the coolest thing. You can see, obviously, forward and back in time, all the different outcomes. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Hi Mom. At Brophy I've had Mr. Middlemist, Mrs. Dowd, Mr. Unrein, and this year Mr. Middlemist again. My favorite book I've read at Brophy was The Once and Future King because I liked analyzing it and its similarities between Star Wars. Most important thing I've learned about writing would be structuring arguments in a concise way. I hope to learn this year how to write faster because I've usually been a slow writer. And a character from a film I would be Luke Skywalker because he's all.
Hi Mom and Dad. The four English teachers I've had at Brophy have been Mr. Middlemist, Mr. Danforth, Mr. Damaso, Mr. Middlemist again this year. My favorite Brophy assigned English book was The Old Man and the Sea because it taught me a lot of important values about life and themes about life. Most important thing I learned about writing while at Brophy is the importance of getting to the point and not adding any extra fluff. What I want to learn this year is how to analyze themes from literature and put them in essay writing. If I could be a character from a book or film, it would be Jon Snow from Game of Thrones because he's honorable, always does the right thing, and thanks for listening.
I hope you're having a good evening and everything. My past 4 years, I've had Mr. Middlemist, Mr. Pigeon, Miss Maynard, and Mr. Middlemist again. My favorite book from all 3 years was The Catcher in the Rye because I could feel like I could relate to the story. The last 3 years, I've learned how to be more concise in my writing. This year, I want to be more fluid with my writing. If I could be any character from any book or film, it would be Luke from Star Wars because I want to learn from experience and from great people like he did. And thanks for listening. I love you, Mom.
Hey Mom, hey Dad. So during my time at Brophy, I've had Mr. Middlemist, Mr. Pigeon, Mr. Damaso, and then I'm going to have Mr. Middlemist again. My favorite book throughout my time at Brophy was The Kite Runner because of the emotions that it had. They were really raw. The most important thing I've learned about writing is condensing and chunk format, which really helped with essay writing. This year I want to learn more how to deeply analyze writing. In any book or film, I'd want to be Doug the dog from Up.
Hi Mom and Dad, it's Carlos. My 4 English teachers at Brophy have been Mr. Middlemiss, Mr. Pigeon, Mr. Damaso, and Mr. Middlemiss again. My favorite read for English at Brophy has been The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn because it's such a timeless classic, fantastic read. The most important thing I've learned about writing at Brophy has been that writing is a beautiful way to express yourself. I want to learn this year how to analyze deeper meanings in text and apply it to my writing. And my favorite character from any book or film has been Rocky Balboa. He's just such a legend. Thanks for listening.
Over the last 4 years, I've had Mr. Middlemiss, Mr. Danforth, Mr. Damaso, and Mr. Middlemiss once again this year for my English class. My favorite book at Brophy to read has been There by Tommy Orange, and I think that the most important thing I've learned about writing is that it brings forth greater meanings that turn into lessons many times. In terms of what I want to learn from English this year, I'd say how to make my writing more complex, not necessarily complicated. And if I could be a character from a book or film, I'd be Spider-Man because being a superhero would be dope.
2, 1, go.
How's it going, Mom and Dad? The 4 English teachers I had were Mr. Caton, Mr. Danforth, Mrs. Maynard, and Mr. Middlemiss. My favorite book was The Things They Carried because it showed me that the power of storytelling. The one thing I've learned from English is you can say more with less, be concise. And the one thing I want to improve is my identification of literary devices. And the one person I'd be in a TV show is Neil Caffrey from my college.
3, 2, 1.
Hey Mom, my past English teachers were Mr. Smith, Mr. Danforth, and Miss Maynard. My favorite assigned book was Ready Player One. I learned that writing has to be original for it to be good, and this year I want to learn how to get a 5 on the AP exam. And if I could be a character, I would be Devin Booker from the Hulu commercial.
Hi Mom and Dad. So the 4 Brophy English teachers that I've had have been Mr. Kane, Mrs. Dowd, Mr. Unrein, and Mr. Middlemiss this year. My favorite Brophy assigned English book was Kite Runner because it taught me a lot about life and it was pretty interesting. The most important thing I've learned about writing is that it helps you learn a lot about yourself, sort of like exploring your mind. And yeah, what do you want to learn this year in English? I want to learn to put my words to paper faster because I'm pretty good at thinking it, but it takes me a long time to write it. What character from a book or film would you like to be? I'd be Professor Charles Xavier from X-Men.
Hi Mom and Dad. The 4 English teachers I've had at Brophy have been Mr. Middlemiss, Mr. Pigeon, Miss Maynard, and again Mr. Middlemiss senior year. Favorite book that I've read so far has been The Alchemist. I loved it because it had a lot of themes about life and the development of life. Most important thing I've learned about writing is how to be concise, how to be brief and get to the point. This year from English, I want to learn more about how to improve my analysis and be more in depth with the text. Favorite character from a book or show has been Sergeant Digman from The Departed. Thanks for listening.